Hi, folks, and thanks for joining us today. I'm going to drop a little blurb in the chat for everyone, just so that you know where to find today's information after the webinar is done, and also how to ask questions. Thank you so much. I'll pass it on to Joshua.
Thank you, Amara. Really appreciate your support today and really excited for all of you who are able to join us. This is an opportunity for us to go over the full proposal information. It is the same as from our webinars during the summer, but we figured it might be worth reiterating because it's been a few months. And then we'll have time for Q&A. So to get started, I'm Joshua Brown. I'm the lead for the National Sea Grant College Program on this. My colleagues Ned Gardner and Frank Meepold from the Climate Program Office will also be joining to help with the Q&A. With that, we'll just dive right in. So as just a reminder, the goal for this Climate Ready Workforce Initiative is to recruit, train, and place workers in good jobs that enhance climate resilience. And all of those are important. I know we've been, lots of folks have been asking a lot of questions over the last few months, so we'll just refresh what that means. The good jobs principles are what define good jobs for this competition. They were agreed upon by Department of Commerce and Department of Labor and reflect strong focus on equity and recruitment and hiring, family supporting benefits, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility throughout the person's tenure in the workplace, empowerment and representation during their time in the workplace, job security and working conditions, so folks know what they're going to be doing and that the working conditions are safe and reasonable, supportive organizational culture, again, living wage, and opportunities to develop skills and advance their career. Jobs that enhance climate resilience are a little broader and reflect workers performing one or more of the following climate-informed skills as part of their job. So this includes applying equity-centered climate resilience principles, reducing vulnerability, exposure, and risk to climate-related impacts, design, build, operate, maintain, and/or improve infrastructure and systems, including nature-based systems needed to reduce climate-related vulnerability and/or risk to people, assets, services, resources, ecosystems, or other attributes valued by individuals, businesses, communities, and/or governments. And finally, because you all are smarter than we are and might have considered something that we haven't, we also have a fourth umbrella category that are other relevant skills which you would define and justify for us. And so, it's entirely possible that despite our best efforts to come up with 3 broad and broadly applicable skills, there might be something we missed, and you are welcome to present that as part of your proposal and say, hey, we think you missed this. This is an important climate informed skill, and we're going to train people to do that. So nice broad opening in terms of what jobs that enhance climate resilience can mean. There is one thing it doesn't mean, and this was a decision made far above our pay grade, and that is it doesn't mean jobs that primarily reduce greenhouse gas emissions, also known as mitigation. So if you're proposing something that is solely focused on jobs that only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it's probably not the competition for you. However, if you're focused on jobs that enhance climate resilience and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, please come right ahead and present that. But remember that the climate resilience piece needs to be primary. I know I've talked with many of you over the last few months about what that can look like. Just remember, resilience primary, mitigation is a welcome secondary benefit, but it is not the primary purpose of this call. Okay, so we've talked about what we're looking for in good jobs that enhance climate resilience. The components of a project are pretty, well, they are involved, but I hope relatively straightforward. First step is eligible or applicant organizations, and we'll talk about who's eligible, form partnerships with employers to identify the jobs, the climate resilient jobs employers need filled. And then they partner with those employers and appropriate climate service practitioners to determine the skills needed for those jobs. So this is employer-led in the sense that we're looking for employers to help inform what jobs they're having a hard time filling and what skills they need to do that in partnership with climate service practitioners and the full partnership team. That team develops trainings to meet the needs of the employers. And then the training is implemented, leading to placement in employer committed jobs. So employers starts with the premise that employers are having jobs they have not been able to fill. They work together with the rest of the partnership to identify the jobs and skills needed, and they commit to hiring people at the end who have those skills. Then you go out and recruit diverse training participants to meet those needs, and you provide wraparound services to support those participants throughout the training process. And then at the end of the day, people have good jobs that enhance climate resilience. So that's the ideal process. Now, there's a lot of ways that commitment may look. It may be limited by what hiring laws affect your particular employer, but the key thing is that employers are involved from the beginning. They have jobs that they need filled by people with those skills, and they are committed to hiring people with those skills. So to make that happen, there's two potential parts of a project, two stages. The first would be designing that program. You may have a good idea, you may have some employers who are interested, but you don't know all the details, so you design it. So again, you still have employers committed at the beginning of the process because they are involved in design. And you could give us a proposal just for design. However, because at the end of the day, this is a train and place program, you would need to be clear how you are implementing that design if you're not using our funds. So you may already have somebody who's ready to pay for a training, you just need to design it and make that happen, and they've got workers ready to be trained, and they're gonna cover that. That would be great. Explain that in the proposal. So that would be if you're just doing program design. If you're doing program design and implementation, you would then show us how you're moving from that design to funding projects needed to provide workforce training, including wraparound services. This can range from academic coursework, on-the-job training experiences, registered apprenticeships, a whole slew of things, paid internships. This is how you're going to actually execute the training that has been designed. Now, again, you could give us a proposal just for program implementation. You have previously designed a training program that will produce people with good, qualified for good jobs that enhance climate resilience. You don't need to spend time developing anything. You just need the resources to make it happen. you can put that proposal in as well. Many of you are proposing efforts that combine design and implementation. That's great too. So those are the two phases that we're looking at. Both of them require employer involvement and commitment, and both of them have a requirement for expected placements. Even if you're just doing a design, you should have a implementation process framed out with somebody else's money to meet the placement goals. So now we get to a long list of program priorities. They need to be consistent with NOAA's strategic focus. They need to support broadly one or more of the following actions from the Ocean Climate Action Plan or others. These were a representative sample that we thought might be most relevant, but you could look somewhere in there and find something else and make the case that your efforts support that. You need to recruit workers. We have a 50 worker minimum, but more is good as well, and they need to be placed at the end of the process into good jobs that enhance climate resilience. Those jobs need to happen within the geographies defined for us by the Inflation Reduction Act, which are coastal states, tribal nations, and territories, or the District of Columbia, with a focus on training workers from the community where the jobs are located. So ideally, if you're training folks in Seattle, or the jobs you're looking for are in Seattle and you're training folks, you're drawing primarily from folks in Seattle. If you're doing work in Duluth, it's drawing primarily from folks in and around Duluth. And then we want you to show how you support work in communities with climate justice vulnerabilities and in other disadvantaged communities as defined by the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool. We've asked you to include reference to that as you in your proposal so that we can show that as well. Identify and include relevant climate experts as strategic partners on the project team to inform project definition and skill development. These may be folks who are state climatologists or work for a climate adaptation partnership program or something else. They may be folks within your organization who have relevant climate skills. We didn't put a strict definition on who qualifies and who doesn't. Rather, we said, look, here's the kind of thing a climate service practitioner can do. Make sure you have somebody like them on the team. And then we want you to engage with NOAA and or our partners, data, access tools, visualizations, expertise, and other stuff to document climate stressors so that we know why the jobs you're identifying meet that definition of jobs that enhance climate resilience, and to use those resources to inform training designed to advance skills for workforce recruits. Again, we didn't say who you specifically had to work with. Rather, please engage as appropriate and at an appropriate level, and make clear why that's the partnership you developed. And then we want you to include appropriate wraparound services for your trainees to help them overcome whatever barriers may be in the way of them being successful in the training. This might include dependent care, transportation, might include stipends for them to be able to take the class rather than work their third job. Whatever is needed and justifiable to help them complete the training, please include it. And then we want you to work collaboratively, I can say that word, to grow regional workforces and their associated economies by co-developing new or enhancing existing training programs that meet the existing and emerging skill needs of employers. So this is really, don't reinvent the wheel. If you've got a training program that works to hit, say, the good jobs part, and you just need to enhance it to include jobs enhancing climate resilience, build upon that. And then we also want you to build enduring capacity for a workforce that can enhance climate resilience. This is funded by the Inflation Reduction Act. That is one-time money. We are getting all of it out the door we can, but we don't want this to be a splash and then the ripples fade and all the good work you've done fades in the background. We want to see that you have a plan for sustaining what you got off the ground once these funds are gone. Then we already talked about you need to do one or both of the following activities: program design or program implementation. And because we are the federal government and we love to measure things, we want tangible metrics, including, for example, employer commitments to hire, numbers of job placements, advancing workers along their career paths, and wage gain. We will work with, you're going to propose some metrics that make sense for your particular project. And if selected, we will work with you to make sure those help us track progress toward climate resilience as well as economic and equity goals. Additionally, so those were the must-haves, and that's a very long list of must-haves. We also really encourage you to partner with the, organizations or to otherwise work to recruit those with barriers to the labor market. For example, persons with disabilities, disconnected youth, individuals in recovery or with past criminal records, serving trainees participating in public benefits programs, veterans and military spouses. We also really would love to see and strongly encourage partnerships with minority serving institutions broadly, including historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities, other MSIs, community colleges or technical colleges. So that's our priorities. It's a lot of boxes to check. However, your proposals will be stronger for making sure you do that. Opportunity basics, most of you are probably as familiar with this at this point as I am. We have $50 million in funding. We anticipate 10 to 20 awards. Obviously, that will flex wildly depending on the amount of money people ask for. You can ask for up to $10 million for your projects, so the math will work out as it will. These grants will be what we term cooperative agreements. They are a form of grant, so it's not a contract where we are telling you specifically what work we need you to execute. Rather, they are in the public interest, so you're telling us how this will benefit the public in relation to our mission. But you will work closely with the Climate Ready Workforce team at NOAA as the projects go forward. We'll help you with reporting and oversight. We will work together to help you access additional NOAA resources, all those sorts of fun things. That is different from the NOAA partner you will already have included in your proposal. Those are folks who are outside of our CRW team. Timing, just for your recollection, we plan for these projects to start August 1st, 2024, assuming we get our funding in plenty of time to do that. These projects should take we anticipate 24 to 48 months. You might propose something shorter, but we anticipate 2 to 4 years. Priority will be given to projects that can start placing workers within 12 to 24 months. That's one of the evaluation criteria, is sort of how quickly you can get workers placed. Now, if you've got one that's going to place workers longer, is that a deal breaker? No, it just means that if it came down to a choice between two otherwise equally meritorious projects, we would look at the ones that were placing at least having initial placements sooner. Biggest determinant of eligibility is that you must be located in coastal states or territories as defined by the United States Code or in the District of Columbia. For those of you who are not familiar with that statute, that does include the Great Lakes, and it also includes tribes whose sovereign territory falls within the geographic boundaries of those states or territories. So this is pretty broad. It covers a large geography. If you are at this point still not sure whether you are in an eligible location, please reach out. The other component of that eligibility criterion is that you have to be a specific type of organization. Again, these were defined for us in the Inflation Reduction Act statute. You need to be a government, either state, tribal, territorial, or local. You may need to be, or you could be an institution of higher education. I can use words. Or you need to be a nonprofit organization or association. Those are the three broad categories. So government, higher education, or nonprofit. Anyone else is welcome to partner and serve as a strategic partner, but these are who the statute defined as eligible for this funding. So the process, we're already partway through it. Folks have submitted their letters of intent to help us select our reviewers. This is a competitive process. Applications will be selected for funding based on how they rank in regards to the evaluation criteria. That is the single most important thing. If you are the #1 ranked proposal, as long as you're not proposing anything illegal or something like that, almost everything else falls away. You'll get funded. That is the primary driver in a competition. That ranking is determined by anonymous expert reviews. So you won't know who these people are, though ideally they will be people who, if you did know them, who they were, you'd say, yeah, that person was qualified. They're going to be experts in climate, project management, workforce development. They may come from a broad range of groups. They will receive training in bias awareness to help mitigate especially the impacts of implicit bias during the review. We've already talked about what letters of intent have been dealt with. Full proposals have to be submitted through grants.gov. They can't come to us in any other way. If you are using a third-party system to help with the submission, just remember that issues with that third-party system do not impact our submission deadlines. If your submission system breaks down, there's nothing I can do about it. If grants.gov breaks down, then we can modify the deadlines. Applications that do not meet the administrative parameters will not be further reviewed. That means if there is a form requested, you need to include that form. If there is a page length and you provide me anything over that page length, the rules would allow us to toss your application entirely. Instead, what we generally do is just cut it off at the page length and send that proposal to reviewers for their thing. So this means no appendices. If we say it's 15 pages and you go to a 16th page, that 16th page and beyond won't be included. So please make sure that your 15-page project narrative contains everything that you want the reviewers to see to assess the quality of your proposal. And you're like, and I'm sure you're asking, why can't I have an appendix? Why can't I have something else? Honestly, reviewers are going to be reviewing 10 to 15 of these. Even with the page limits, these proposals will probably be north of 40 plus pages. In some cases, they even with strict page limits, they can be over 100 with all the additional materials that aren't part of the page limit. It just gets really hard to review. So please focus on sticking to those page limits everywhere you can. If you don't meet the administrative parameters, you ask for too much money, you don't have the right forms, we will not send them forward to review. And we will be very sad about that, and so will you. So there is no formal cost sharing on these applications, which is a boon and a bane. You don't have to have match. However, there are criteria that reflect how much of other people's money you have involved, money or other resources. So this can reflect employer commitments, staff time, volunteer hours, things like that people are bringing to make this project more successful. As you have that, be sure to make it clear that it is involved. Okay, just another reminder, your full proposal will be submitted through grants.gov. This is the grant opportunity page. You can download most of the standard forms from there. Some you will need to get from the Sea Grant website. And then you will submit it you will submit through grants.gov. Again, project narrative has some key components within 15 pages. Describe your project, partnership structure, give us a description of your region, impacts of the partnership, funding request, and how you're designing and implementing the program. If you're only doing one or the other, you can save some word count, I suppose, but if you're doing implementation, you need to at least tell us a little bit about the design that'll be being implemented, and then how you're going to share the results and knowledge generated through this. You'll need to include your professional qualifications from the leadership team. We leave it up to you to decide who needs to be included in those 2-page resumes. Generally, it is anybody who's named in as having a key role. If you are going to be hiring somebody and they're going to be playing a major role, give us a sense of the kinds of qualifications they will have that you'll put in, say, the job search announcement. Any required supporting documentation for nonprofits, there are a series of certifications listed in the NOFO that prove you're a nonprofit. And then we do give you some optional supporting documentation if you wish to include it. But generally, that's what we want to see. The budget requirements are equally important. We need a Sea Grant 90-4 budget form. This is different from the other SF forms. It just slices the budget a little bit differently that helps us make our determinations on how costs are being spent. As that is a Sea Grant specific form, more general NOAA or Fed-wide guidance probably won't be super helpful in filling it out. Additionally, we ask for a budget justification or a budget narrative. This is where you explain that you're buying 25 bicycles so that your trail riding climate specialists can get out and do the training, and you need to buy those 25 bicycles, and here's the cost per bike, and so forth. That is generally a Word document. It's not a spreadsheet. And then finally, if you have one, you would need to provide us a copy of your negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. And then there are the standard forms that provide higher level overview of the budget and breakdown on the awards. You'll need to include those. Those are all downloadable from grants.gov with the exception of the extra section B. This is basically a section of the SF 424A for awards that are more than 2 years long and have both federal and cost share, because there's only 4 columns on the 424A, and if you go more than 2 years with federal and non-federal, you run out of columns. So you can download that section on our website. This is a reminder to, if you have not already started to get connected with SAM, do so right now. It can take more than a month to get your account active. And unfortunately, we NOAA do not handle SAM processing. We can't really help you troubleshoot it. Your best bet is to reach out to the SAM help desk. Similarly, you'll need to have a grants.gov registration, and NOAA has transitioned from Grants Online, which was our old grant system, to a system called ERA. This is how you need to register for that. I know many of you have been working on that. Once again, troubleshooting this registration process is not something we can help you with. It is not controlled by NOAA, and when you write to me asking for help, all I will be able to do is point you to the help desk. But we have included the links to extensive trainings that they have provided that in theory will help you register. And then, as you are all deeply interested in how you're going to be evaluated, these are the evaluation criteria from the funding opportunity. Please, as you prep your proposal, look at each of them, see the sort of questions and such underneath, and make sure that you are addressing each of those. Yeah. And so now I am done with my part. We're going to open it up for questions. I think Frank and Ned are available to join me as well and can turn their microphones and microphones and cameras on. And please, as you have questions, please enter them into the chat, because that way we get a copy of them, and we will also post the questions and the answers in a Q&A document after. Right, Amara?
Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and do that.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and lob the questions over to you. Our first one just asked for us to go over the evaluation criteria, which I think we did, but related to that, will explicit explanation of the good jobs be required?
As in, I may need some more clarification, but yes, we're going to want you to make the case for why the jobs you are training people for are not just jobs, but good jobs, how they interact with those good jobs principles. So it might reflect that, yeah, they're still paying not the highest wages, but maybe they have great benefits and they are highly stable. Or it may be that in a more rural area, they provide an opportunity for folks to supplement seasonal or other kinds of work so that they can make ends meet, because this provides steadier income or something like that. So yeah, you would need to tell us why the jobs that are not just good but also enhance climate resilience. That'd be the other piece. Frank or Ned, anything you'd like to add on that?
No, I think you got it spot on. I mean, I would definitely refer to the good jobs principles on the Department of Labor. Commerce is also part of that partnership. But I think it's pretty well laid out what they're looking for as far as a good job. Also, remember that this program, the Climate Ready Workforce Program, builds on the Good Jobs Challenge by the Economic Development Agency Administration. I always get that A wrong, but so you can see examples of how already successful grantees have dealt with these principles in effect.
And the resilience principles skills are laid out on page 4 and the top of page 5 of the NOFO.
All right, our next question is, have other applicants encountered great enthusiasm for the training but hesitancy on the part of employers to commit to a hard number of jobs?
Yes. That is a consistent challenge. In some cases, the hesitancy is, we'll call it a natural caution. In some cases, the hesitancy is driven by local or state laws or regulations around what kind of commitments can be made. And what we have been telling folks is have employers make the commitment, the strongest commitment they feel comfortable and legally allowed to make, and then justify why that's the strongest commitment they can make. So if you're a state agency, you know, many state agencies and federal government, no exception, have rules on hiring, what the process has to look like. So it might be the commitment is we will hire X number of people who have this skill set. And if your training happens to be the only one providing it, well, that's great, and you can make that case. In other cases, you know, if it's just caution about the overall business cycle, I would point out that in theory, the skills, the jobs that you are training people in skills for are ones that employers are having a hard time filling. So there is notionally already a demand that they are unable to meet. And so hopefully that encourages them to be a little willing to take a little bit more risk, but essentially have them give you the best commitments they are comfortable making, and then justify why that's the best commitment they can make.
And the employers can demonstrate their seriousness also by being very active in shaping the team and its priorities. So that should come through in the proposal, that the employer is integral to being successful as a partnership, which means they're setting priorities around training requirements and other aspects of bringing people into the workforce. And I think when reviewers see that, they'll be able to put in context and understand the commitments.
And realizing where we are in the process here we are the 18th of January, and full proposals are due in under a month. If you're having a hard time finding employers, I've talked with many people about how to do this, that there are a lot of different actors who are doing resilience related work across the country in the jurisdictions that were allowed under the solicitation. You know, climate resilience officers, climate officers, sustainability professionals at different kinds of government know what kinds of projects are going on. They may know who are the people doing those projects that have already been funded. They may know things that are coming up. So I think that one of the thoughts here is that the people who are going to have a sense of where the work is and who is going to be doing the work or likely to be doing the work are people that I would highly recommend checking in with to see if you can get employment commitments if you're having a hard time getting them, as many as you would like. So, you know, there is a lot of work coming out of federal dollars in this area across the landscape. Trying to chase down exactly who the employer would be, whether it's a government, a a business or another entity. That's just a tricky thing to figure out. We've talked with many people about this. Hopefully you can find who is actually doing the work, and that's how you can get to your commitments. Hopefully that's helpful.
All right, thank you. Which forms are required to complete the application, and which platforms do they need to be submitted on?
All the forms, let me scroll back up. You need to have the narrative, you need to have your project narrative, the qualifications, any required supporting documentation and certification. All the forms listed here are potentially required. I believe the CD 511 and the SFLLL are only required for organizations that also lobby. That is spelled out in the NOFO under the content and form of application. Please refer to that and make sure that what you submit is there. All of those forms will be submitted through grants.gov. None of them come to us via email or any other source. So you will be able to upload all of them into grants.gov, both the standard forms and your other narrative attachments like the 90-4, the budget justification, and your indirect cost rate agreement.
All righty. Is there any potential impact with government shutdown on the timing of submission, etc.?
Maybe. If we have a protracted shutdown in the period of time right before submission, we will extend the submission window. We are in theory supposed to pretend like Congress will get it all together and funding will happen the way they're supposed to, and that shutdowns just are not a thing. But the reality is that they're a thing. So if it's a very short shutdown, say over a weekend or something like that, probably that won't change our deadlines. If we start to see a multi-day shutdown during the work week, especially in early February, we will likely extend the deadline by approximately the amount of time the government was shut down. It will be at least the amount of time the government was shut down. It may be somewhat longer, just to avoid like making you submit on a Saturday or something like that. We are heartless bureaucrats, but not that heartless. Yes.
All right, thank you.
That was a joke, by the way. We have.
Thank you. Professional teacher training in climate and ocean literacy, including resilience, is a partner priority as they recruit and retain teachers in rural coastal areas and engaging with youth for a range of blue occupations, current and future. Does this align with the intent of this NOFO?
At the level you described, probably. The caveats would be that we want people to move to not just get a climate resilience gold star that says, now I'm a climate trained teacher and I have all my previous responsibilities plus some new ones and no additional benefits or no new role. That's not what we're looking for. But if those teachers were gaining the skills and some sort of new role and ideally enhanced compensation, then it would fit. So at the very top level, yes, the devil is always in the details.
I think there's one other important consideration in that question. We are seeing across the country in subnational climate action plans an increasing recognition that education, teachers, schools, and other related fields are important to their climate actions sometimes resilience focused, sometimes mitigation, sometimes both. I think it would help your argument if you're looking at that as a target audience for your jobs, that in the either county, state, or local city, municipal climate action plan, they explicitly look at that as part of their resilience strategy. I think it would help you make that case stronger if there was something like that. I'll give you a case example. Montgomery County, Maryland, in their climate action plan clearly names these types of activities as a part of their climate action planning and implementation work. Delaware has similar things at the state level. So, I mean, something like that, I think, helps your case if that exists.
Thank you for that extra context.
Sure.
If we are able to see the specific grant application PDFs, can we assume that we are all set with STEM, ERA Commons, and grants.gov registrations? I'll repeat. If we can see the specific grant application PDFs, can we then assume that we're all set with SAM, ERA Commons, and grants.gov registrations?
Absolutely not. Anyone, even without an account, can see those documents. You will need to have verified your account with each of those systems. I would keep that email where you can reference it, but no, until you have something documenting that you have an active account, do not assume. Do not assume.
Okay.
That sounds way scarier than I really mean it to, but like, no. They will do their best to help you, but those systems are not. They're not transparent.
For the budget narrative attachment, do we compile the 90-4 form, budget justification, copy of negotiated indirect cost rate agreement as one PDF document, or should we upload them each as their own attachments?
I have had recipients do it either way. I don't have a particular preference. There have been file size issues where sometimes those documents get too large and you have to submit them as individual PDFs, but you can do it either way.
Initially, this NOFO said 60 million, if I'm not mistaken.
The NOFO has always been for 50 million. The overall Climate Ready Workforce Program is 60 million. 10 million of that is being used to provide resources through NOAA's training and climate services groups to make available to recipients and others as part of this process. So the NOFO has always been 50 million.
Do subcontracts to nonprofits need to have the nonprofit certification?
No. Anyone can be a subcontract, a subawardee. It's only we need those certifications to establish your eligibility as a nonprofit. So the only reason we would need that on subawardees is if there was something that you were using their nonprofit status specifically, and we would need to be able to verify that. So broadly, I would say no. We are only requiring it here to verify that the primary applicant is eligible.
Okay. For the CD511 form, it has a field that asks for a mandatory award number, which we would not have. Do we just put not applicable?
Yes.
Could you please clarify or share examples of the kinds of entities you consider for relevant NOAA and NOAA-funded offices, programs, labs, etc. in the partnership?
So yeah, I'll take a stab, and then I'm sure Ned and Frank will give some additional ones. Anybody, any federal organization such a that is part of NOAA, like the National Weather Service, the yep, drawing a complete blank there. No, our Climate Program Office, if parts of the National Ocean Service, Fisheries Service, all of those are NOAA federal elements. That includes our labs and science centers like the Northwest Fisheries Science Center or the Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory as two examples. So anyone who works for NOAA is probably a reasonable partner. Then there is sort of the broader NOAA family that includes long-term partnerships between NOAA and other groups. These may be university-based partnerships like the Sea Grant programs, the CAP-RISA programs, many of our cooperative institutes that work on climate and resilience issues. Those are like the coastal zone management programs that are present in many states, the National Estuarine Research Reserves that fall under those coastal zone management programs. Those are the sorts of groups that are in that NOAA adjacent space that would meet this criteria. There are undoubtedly more. And if you have a concern about a specific one, please reach out to one of the three of us. But broadly, they're going to be somebody who's using this NOAA logo for more than a single grant. And I know that's a really hand-wavy sort of thing, but an organization that has a long-standing partnership with us. Frank or Ned?
Ned, do you want to go first or you want me to?
Go ahead, Frank.
So I think there are many go-to answers here. I think what Joshua said is spot on. We did provide a link off the main Climate Ready Workforce page to a page on the U.S. Climate Resilience Toolkit. It's right there on the right hand toward the bottom. There's some suggestions there, but you can find these people who have resilience expertise in geographies that are close to where you are through, you can definitely find them in the warning and coordinating meteorology. People in these forecast offices, there are 128 of them around the country. I will suggest though, finding the actual link to the people in there is a little tricky. It's going to take you a little bit of time to dig around. It's not as intuitive. I just did it yesterday for somebody else, and I was like, oh, there it is. Be persistent. I mean, these web
Regional Climate Service Directors. Sorry.
Yeah, the Regional Climate Services Directors under the National NCEI. I mean, they're out there, and there are pages about these things where you can kind of dig in and go, well, this is closer to what we're trying to do, whether it's in the Weather Service, Sea Grant, CAP-RISA. There's lots of these types of people around you. Some places you have more than others. Some places you have less, depending on the geography where you are. But we did try and give you some guidance there about that. If you need further, help, I think myself and Ned we're in the Climate Program Office, not in the Sea Grant Office. You can follow up with us and see if we can help you even further. Ned, does that work for you? Oh, wow. All right.
All righty. How many letters of intent did we receive?
Just slightly less than 200.
If we are hiring a program manager, do we include that position as part of our total number of jobs created?
Are they coming out of the training? that you are doing. I would generally with these sorts of things, when we are measuring jobs created, it's not jobs created by staffing the grant itself. So the program manager probably doesn't count unless
The
you're
intent of the
training
program is,
people to be
yeah.
climate resilient program managers, and they're somebody you're hiring from your own training, then I probably let it slide.
With the addition that I think the intent of the program is not so much to fund positions and then count those as jobs. The intent is to find employers who want to hire jobs that are people to fill jobs that are in demand. So that distinction is important.
And I think
Very good question.
one other, as we've been thinking about this thing to think about is the dollars for the job beyond the life of the grant have to come from some other source for that employment position. So if it's only for the person who's working as part of the grant during the grant under the dollars of the grant and not dollars of some other organizational budget beyond the grant, then I think that the spirit of these jobs is really that the job is covered under a different budget than the dollars of the grant. Helping you get ready for the job of that is really where the grant dollars come from. But it's really about the dollars for this person beyond the grant are covered by some other entity beyond what we are providing through the grant. Sorry, I use the word grant a lot of times, so sorry about that. But I think you get the spirit of what I'm saying.
All right, thank you. In addition to training individuals from marginalized communities, are those jobs supposed to be located within those communities, or is the main focus on where the trainee or hiree is from / who they are?
So great question. In an ideal world, I think I put this on here, that we would see, didn't I put this here? Ideally, you would be recruiting folks to work in jobs in the communities they are from. I don't know where, I'm sure I had it on the slide. Yeah, place workers in good jobs with a focus on training workers from the community where the jobs are located. That can be, you can define that geography. You know, if you're working in the greater Washington, D.C. area, you know, you could reasonably get folks from Baltimore or down to maybe Richmond as part of your trainees for jobs in the DC area. But justify that. Tell us why that's the right spread. And again, if you're working on really rural communities, maybe you've got a much broader community shed to bring people into those jobs. Just tell us why you're picking the areas you're picking and how that meets this priority.
Thank you. Who is the backbone organization? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me pause there before I ask this question. We're at 4:59. Are you all okay to continue on? If yes, I will continue fielding questions. If no, we can take the questions that are in the chat space, answer them offline, and provide them in the Q&A document.
I'm good for about another 10 minutes.
Okay, we do still have quite a bit of questions in the queue, and we do still have quite a few attendees on for your awareness.
Okay.
We'll be brief.
All right. Who is the backbone organization? I'm the PI from the university, but have a team of nonprofits, tribes, and boundary spanners as part of the core team with key pieces of the program. Is our whole collective the backbone organization, or just the university as we are lead?
In your example, it would be the university as the lead. So the backbone organization is the organization that is submitting the grant, and they are the backbone of the partnership. They're there to help convene everybody else and give anchoring. So in your example, the university is, it's one organization. It's who we're going to give the money to.
Thank you. Clarifying question. So we describe or create the description of these good jobs, or are these jobs that already exist in the Department of Labor? For instance, what if we identify some engineering jobs, some emerging jobs, such as NBS designer or analyst, that don't necessarily exist on the DL website?
You are correct. You can either use existing jobs or define new ones. Both of those are acceptable.
What part of the grant award can be used to support the cost share employers are committing to?
There's no formal cost share. And normally employers or partners would be providing the cost share. So it would be either, I'm not sure I'm parsing the question entirely correctly, so we may need a clarifying follow-up, but either all of it could, the whole grant could support work that is also being supported by employer contributions, or none of it, because we don't want to be using the grant funds to pay employers to do things. So depending on exactly what you meant, let's just say, send me a follow-up and we'll include that in the Q&A, because I'm not sure I'm interpreting either way correctly.
Okay. Do we need a reference list?
As in like a bibliography? If you are citing things, please include a bibliography. I believe that is an optional, doesn't count against your page limit if you need it. If you are asking references, as in people who we will look up, call to see if you're capable of doing what you're doing, no, that's what your resumes are for.
Where do we input the NEPA statement?
You don't have to put it anywhere, because we said in the NOFO that we are not seeking any, and so it is not required. But if for some reason I also put that you had to say it somewhere in the project narrative, I would put it at the end of your project narrative.
Do Sea Grant or CAP RESAs have their own documentation that they must upload or create?
No, they would, if they are involved in the project, they would either be part of the documentation you're already submitting. If they're providing a letter of support, they would provide a letter of support, but they don't have a separate channel. It would all come in on the same package.
So the 50 worker minimum, can that be over a few years? We were aiming to train about 24 folks and would need to scale a tad if we need to be training at least 50.
Yeah, it is over the course of the award. So if you're proposing a 2-year award, you'd need to do 20 a year or 25 a year. If you're math, good. if you're doing a 4-year award, you need to do 12 and a half people a year.
12, 13, 12, 14.
Feel bad for that half person.
Alrighty. What would you consider a good project cost to number of trainees/jobs ratio? Any guidance on this front is appreciated.
Yeah, it would be appreciated. We have received lots of inputs, range with some people suggesting it might be as low as $4,000 or $5,000 per trainee, and others saying that especially when you factor in wraparound services, it might be $40,000 or $50,000. Those numbers are highly variable across geography. You tell us and justify what the expense is based on the costs in your area.
Joshua, if I may, let's keep in mind, since the funds themselves are not paying for the salary, then the rationale for building resilience is typically around saving money saving lives, saving resources. So, you know, an investment in the job doesn't have to be relative to the salary of the person who is hired or the cumulative salaries. If we're building resilience, we're in fact saving, getting a return on investment that includes salary of the person, but also the work that they do over time. So you be evaluated relative to your peers using the criteria that Joshua laid out. But if that helps you think about just focusing on the resilience and the good jobs is meritorious in its own right.
Once approved for the grant, is it possible to get an advance to support operations for the programmatic work?
NOAA grants are generally on a cost reimbursable basis. And so so you would invoice us, well, you'd invoice the Treasury actually through SAM, more or less, for those funds. But if you're asking, can you spend before the official start date of the grant? Yes, NOAA grants have a 90-day at your own risk pre-award spending for costs that are essential for the project. So for example, you might need to hire somebody, and costs associated with hiring somebody could fall under that 90-day pre-award. Things like that. Once we have selected who we will fund, that's certainly the kind of conversation we can have once we notify you. But so there is the possibility of advanced spending, but it is all done on a reimbursable basis. So we are not able to give you, say, 10% of the award without invoices.
There is great workforce needs in the public sector versus the private sector. Are public employers, example, local governments, reasonable employer targets for this note?
Yes, absolutely.
Does an internship paid for by the grant count as an initial placement? For example,
Internships are training opportunities. They don't count for the job placement.
we are proposing to work with city, county, and state offices to identify what climate resilience training and skills they'll need for future staff to have. In some cases, the departments that our trainees will be hired by are still in the process of being built, and we will be advising them on what skills they need and who to hire. For example, many of our counties are just starting to set up resilience authorities that will hire our trainees. Does this fit as the need is there, but the employers are not yet set up?
That's a definite maybe. Ideally, I would say the employer exists because it's the government. Whether the specific department or not exists doesn't change that. The key thing is making sure that whomever you're working with is capable of making those commitments to reflect, yes, we're standing up our Department of Climate Resilience and we're going to hire 12 people. And I'm in a position to actually make that commitment and hold that department to that. So it is another one of those things where you will need to secure the commitment and justify why that commitment is appropriate.
And I would expect if something like that is in process, it could be a resilience plan for the county or you name it, where they've already documented how they're going to implement the plan. There's got to be something that is tangible for the reviewers to look at is how firm these jobs are likely to occur. And that's just so who can make that claim and what other documentation you can find that sets that as something that is not just an aspiration, but it's actually something that is planned and will likely occur.
So I'm gonna ask, do we want to stop there as it's now 5:10? For folks who still have unanswered questions in the queue, thank you for sharing those. We're gonna go ahead and compile them into a Q&A document, and then we'll be able to share those back with you as soon as we have them responded to and the PDF cleaned up.
Thank you all so much for these great questions. Thank you for your interest in this. I know it's a lot of hard work. Thank you for all the hard work and good work you are doing in your communities. It's our real privilege to be able to engage with you and hopefully support you in some capacity. And a special thanks to Amara for making this all happen and keeping us on track. And yep, if you have additional questions, please reach out, sg.grants@noaa.gov. I think that was on the slide. Yeah.
One final reminder that all of the information is going to be available at cgrant.noaa.gov/CRW. That's where we'll host the slide deck. We'll have a copy of the recording there. We'll upload the Q&A there. There will be a PDF of the presentation available with links for clicking. And all of our previous webinars are also available there for your review, along with other materials from those previous recordings.
And if there's any questions, just because I've realized that time is very precious here in the final phases of your proposal development. If you need a specific question, please, we have the ones that came in. We'll try and get you responses as quickly as possible. Amara, you mentioned that, but I can totally imagine that the people who are on this call would like those answers as soon as possible. So, there's many ways for you to reach out and engage us, and we'll try and get you those answers as quickly as possible so you can close out your proposals. Just last point, this is a first of a kind program for the US government, a climate adaptation and resilience workforce development program. So, we're learning this together, but it's an incredibly exciting and unique opportunity for the more successful these programs are, the more we can prove that this kind of program is necessary to build a climate ready nation. So it's a grand journey we're on together. It's incredibly exciting and also incredibly important. We look forward to working with you going forward. Thank you very much.